Welcome everyone to another Fuzz Thoughts, and the first movie I'm going to talk about today is Armour of God from 1986. It's a Jackie Chan movie, and when I say that, I don't just mean he's in it, I don't just mean he's starring in it, he is also the director of the movie, which is something he did quite a bit back then. Police Story being the more notable one that I've seen already from that part of his career. But I had some weird expectations kind of with this one. Not even before I watched it. I'm talking more about in the movie itself, where the opening prologue is Jackie Chan, and he's in I think Africa, stealing a sword, an artifact, an old sword that's part of the Armour of God from a tribe. And he's doing a lot of typical Jackie Chan stuff. There's a lot of that comedy mixed with action where he's making the funny faces when he's just about to dodge something, or he'll kick up a table or something to block an arrow or whatever it is. But it's very kinetic and it's very action packed, and he's sliding down a hill and there's all this stuff going on. That opening to the movie very much communicated to me that it was going to be Jackie Chan's take on Indiana Jones. That's what it felt like. Now, there are some differences, of course, because it's Jackie Chan's type of action and comedy, and then the character as well feels like morally is a bit more kind of in the grey area, because he's literally just stealing it so that he can sell it in an auction and make a lot of money. So it's not like he's some noble purveyor of artifacts or anything like that. He's kind of just doing it for profit. So it's weird to me that this movie, after this opening sequence, is not that. Not really in any way great way. It's more about the fact that his friend's fiancée gets kidnapped by an evil organization who want the Armour of God. And they kidnap this girl because they know that the famous treasure hunter, Jackie Chan, which is his name in the movie, by the way, he uses his real name. He's got a couple of nicknames, but his name is Jackie Chan. They basically are just forcing him to go and find the Armour of God for them. And the weird thing is, it's not, when I say that, you're thinking, oh, he's going to go and travel to this corner of the world and steal a part from it from this cave, and travel to this corner of the world and steal the shield from this temple or something. No, all of the pieces, the sword was kind of the last piece that needed to be found. Three of the other pieces all belong to one guy, one rich guy who's already bought them. So the movie's more about him and his friend going and convincing this rich guy to let them borrow the armor so they can try and get the girlfriend back. And then they just kind of assume the bad guys have already got a couple of pieces. So there's no actual searching for the armor. It's more about the sort of the infiltration of this secret cult organization that stole the girlfriend in the first place, and some action scenes and chase sequences that sort of come out of that as they're getting closer. And there's some infiltration, there's a weird mind control subplot at one point. All this is going on, but none of it is the movie that the opening 15 minutes made me think it was going to be. I legitimately thought this was going to be a adventure globetrotting type movie, and it was more like just a sort of typical someone's been kidnapped, we have to go and save them type movie. And that's pretty much what it is. And it's not to say that it's bad. It's actually fairly entertaining, all things considered. Jackie Chan's action is pretty good. There's a really over-the-top car chase at one point, which is pretty solid. And there's some fun stuff towards the end. But I have to say, the movie I thought it was going to be was a little bit more interesting plot-wise than what we ended up getting. I think the big thing for me is that when I said there's a little mind control plot at one point, I won't go into that, I don't want to spoil anything too much, but that relatively comes out of nowhere. And I'm really conflicted about it, because on the one hand, it feels so just all of a sudden we're doing this weird plot. But on the other hand, arguably it's the most entertaining part of the movie. There's a lot of musical chairs type comedy with it, where there's people getting in and out of rooms and not knowing who's in what room and things like that. And it's a fun little sequence on its own. It's a really fun 10-minute little set piece of comedy and misunderstandings. And that's really cool. But it's not necessarily something that feels natural to show up in the movie, and it feels from a pacing perspective, it's really near the end of the movie as well. It's right before we get to the third act with all the action stuff. So yeah, kind of a weird movie, honestly. I went into it not really knowing much about it, and I think I came out of it feeling like it set me up for Jackie Chan meets Indiana Jones, and instead it dropped that after 15 minutes and just kind of became more of a typical, like, action save the kidnapped girl type plot. And as that, it's perfectly fine. Like, it's entertaining enough. I don't really have any big complaints other than just the plot after that first chunk is never becomes that interesting. All the exciting things that I thought it was going to lead to end up being more about finding the bad guy's base, and that's kind of most of the movie, in all honesty, and making some deals and things like that. So yeah, kind of a weird one, honestly. I didn't necessarily go into it thinking, oh, it's going to be another classic kind of thing, and I'm not really sure how well regarded it is, like, amongst Jackie Chan fans or fans of Hong Kong cinema. I'm not sure if it's considered one of the better ones, or if it's kind of exactly where I'm feeling on it, which is, you know, pretty decent and some fun moments, but nothing special all in when the plot's just not good enough to really be that excellent. I think the sequel's meant to be a bit better, so I'm very curious to see if Armour of God 2 Operation Condor ends up being good. Now, I don't have that one as of yet. I've owned this one for like a couple of years, and it's been sitting there waiting to be watched, so I finally got around to it. I'm trying to make an effort to watch some of the stuff that I've bought and still not got around to. So, it's not bad. It's a fun movie. It just isn't exactly what I thought it was setting up to be in the start, and it kind of always left me feeling a little bit wanting because of it. I kept waiting for it to become this more adventurous type movie at some point, and it never really quite did that. It's mostly set in like a city, and it's kind of like a castle-y type area, but it's not really what I think most people probably think it's going to be based on that opening. So, you know, like, lots of positives for sure, but still kind of like a little bit more lukewarm than I was maybe hoping for, to be honest. I wonder if maybe I'll like it more on a rewatch, just because I'll know exactly what it is going in. Maybe I'll just appreciate it more on its own terms. But for this first time viewing, I was kind of feeling a little bit underwhelmed to a point for most of it. Even though there's definitely some fun moments, there's definitely fun individual scenes that I think are quite good. But I never really got super invested in the plot to get the girlfriend back. So that is Armour of God. The other movie that I want to talk about today is from 2004, and it is called Wicker Park. Now, this is actually the same director and same star even as Lucky Number 11, which I talked about last time. And this is a remake of a French film, I believe, from 1996, 1995, around there. That film's called The Apartment. Not to be confused with the classic American film, The Apartment, from like 1960s, which is a very good film, might I add, but this has nothing to do with that. The original film had Vincent Cassel in it, who you might know from various things. But this is a movie that is told out of order. It's a very kind of timey-wimey, sounds like time travel. It's not time travel, but it's very interweaving in its story, where there's like a present-day plot, there's a backstory plot, and then there's like another like sort of like perspective that comes in and really jumbles it up later on in the film. And usually when you hear about a plot like that, you assume it's some kind of thriller, some kind of maybe even like an action movie perhaps. And it's neither of those things. There's a couple of things that maybe feel like it's almost going to become a thriller, but it's mostly about relationships. It's mostly kind of like a romance, I guess, even though it doesn't really feel romantic for a lot of the movie, but that's kind of what it's really about. It's about Josh Hartnett's character, who's not over this girl that he was very serious about a couple of years ago, and we kind of follow him trying to find her because he gets a whiff that she's around again in Chicago. And we also see kind of all the near misses, and we see different perspectives of certain events, and we see the backstory, of course, of how they met and how that sets up things. And there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of interweaving of things. What's very interesting about this movie to me is the fact that it's a remake of a movie from the mid-90s, and it came out in 2004, because the thing that I really need to stress about this movie is that it is so reliant on the idea of like leaving notes for someone that they never get, for passing on messages that they don't get, for missing people and not getting a chance to speak to them. What I'm saying is that it's written in a world before every single person had a mobile phone. or a cell phone for the Americans. And you can tell that the original story was probably written in that world, and it was the mid-90s, and while they did exist, some people had them. It was definitely not the expectation that everyone did, and most people didn't. Right? Most working class people certainly didn't at the time in the mid-90s. But by the time you get to 2004, when the American movie Wicker Park is out, that's actually changed quite significantly. It's maybe not quite as complete total saturation as, post like smartphone boom in like 2008, where like all of a sudden like it was kind of a necessity for everyone to have a phone of some kind that could do other things. But this movie still operates in the idea that, at least for the most part, they don't really have phones that they're using to talk to each other. You do see some of them use mobile phones, particularly later on in the plot, so maybe they're suggesting that more in the backstory they didn't have the phones, because that was a couple of years ago, but in 2004, it'll be, okay, a few characters have got them now, so we're kind of using them a little bit. But I think, and it's not even necessarily a problem per se, I think it's just kind of interesting that it's like the original and the remake are over this time period where this fundamental thing about the world changed so much that it was really noticeable to me that no one was really using phones for the most part throughout the movie. Mobile phones, like landlines, sure, answering machines, sure, but not like live conversations anywhere they wanted at any time. And the plot relies on a lot of this, because the plot relies on a lot of someone doesn't get told someone's going to be somewhere at a certain time, or a message gets changed a little bit along the way. There's a lot of those things going on. Anyway, that was like the most, the reason, because I don't talk about every movie I watch on Fuzz Thoughts. I kind of pick like two of the more interesting ones, or the ones that I feel like I've got something to say about. And I think this one, like the big reason why I wanted to talk about it was this weird feeling to it, because it was written before phones were as well saturated, but this remake came out when they were kind of saturated, and it's kind of a weird feeling because of that. But how do I feel about the movie? Like, I've not really said if I like the movie or not yet, and it's okay. I don't love the movie. I think it got a bit more interesting as it went on, and to its credit, it did keep me guessing. It did keep me thinking about what was going on, and it did keep me thinking about who do I want to root for in this movie, which is maybe also a bit of a problem as well, that for a good half of the movie, like, I'm like, should I be rooting for this guy? He's acting a little bit like a stalker. Or should I be rooting for this character because they're doing this, they're doing that? It's a little bit, self-serious, I guess, in a way, where I think if you're in the mood for that, the tone might hit you just right, but I think if you aren't, then it might be a little tough to kind of get into and really buy into the obsession of the character, because we kind of have to like just trust this character's obsessed with someone and follow all these kind of decisions he makes that feel really kind of crazy, and like to the point where you're saying this isn't healthy. But then the movie, as it goes on, it does kind of turn a little bit into more empathetic, I'll just say, without getting too much into things. And I think that turn might have worked better if there was a bit more to like about some of the characters early on, when it was intentionally being as mysterious as possible, but that also meant that there wasn't as much of a connection to the characters as I think maybe could have enhanced the story and really drawn me in. That was the other thing I was thinking about as I was watching the movie, and I knew it was a remake of a French film, is that I was also wondering, well, aside from the phone thing, which I've went into, like, I can imagine the tone's probably different, just because that often happens when a foreign film is remade in the US. Just in the last few months, Save the Green Planet was remade into Begonia, and me and David on the Ace talked a lot about those two movies and talked about how some of the charm of Save the Green Planet wasn't there, even though Begonia was a very, very, very good, well-made movie. There's just inherent differences in the cultures and how movies are made between the two countries, and I just had a feeling that the French one is probably going to be a bit sleazier and maybe a bit darker in terms of what it's doing. And when I read the one sentence synopsis on Letterboxd for the original French movie, it sounded like the main character is a lot more like unhinged, and it really paints him as obsessive. Whereas I think Wicker Park, while it kind of keeps you at a distance and you're kind of saying, oh, he's doing things that are a bit stalkery, It's Josh Hartnett, and you kind of get the feeling that the movie wants you to kind of go along with the ride with him and just trust him because he's the handsome leading man. I don't think it wants to be cerebral and make you question the psychology of him, make you think about if he's like sane in the head because he's acting a certain way. I think you're meant to be a lot more just kind of, oh, he's our leading man, we're meant to root for him by default, and then, you know, from there maybe, you know, develop things a bit. And there's nothing like inherently wrong with that. And like I said, because this movie I think does take a empathetical route towards the end, I wonder if the original French film did the same thing. I genuinely wonder if the ending or the third act even is even comparable between the two, to be honest, based on the tonal differences that even just reading the description of the French film made it seem like there might be. Now, I've not seen the French film, I don't know for sure, but that was the vibe I was getting from the description anyway. On its own, Wicker Park is a perfectly watchable movie. I'm not mad that I spent time with it, but I also wouldn't rank it super high or really praise it all that much either. It feels like a fun little experimental like narrative structure movie. Like, oh, we're going to play with how we reveal the story and tell things out of order, and we're going to make you care about a certain event in a different way once we see it from this perspective and that kind of thing. And there's an interesting cast there beside Josh Hartnett. Matthew Lillard's in the movie. There's a very young Rose Byrne, who I was surprised to see her because like I think I didn't see her in anything until like 2009, 2010. So the fact that she was in a movie a good 5 or so years before then was interesting, because I didn't realize she was in Hollywood movies at that point. I assumed she was doing Australian TV or something at that time. But yeah, I mean, there's an interesting set of faces in there for sure. But I think that ultimately it kind of, you know, it's got like a narrative structure kind of gimmick, I suppose. And I don't know, there's definitely points where like I was kind of into the mystery, so it was effective in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I think the strictness of the gimmick of the narrative structure also made it a little bit difficult to connect to characters early on, and meant that I was kind of waiting for like at least half the movie before I started to feel any kind of like sympathy or empathy for anyone, because it was keeping me at such a distance for that entire first half. And that's a bit tough to kind of like win me over after that, because I've kind of been disconnected for a little bit long by that point. Having said that, I think it ends up being better than I thought it would be based on that feeling in the first half, but not enough that I'm like, oh, it completely like comes out in the other end as like as a great movie. I think it's an interesting film that tries some cool stuff, and some of it works. And like I don't mind having watched it. I think it was a worthwhile watch, but maybe not one that I'm going to recommend that much or return back to. So yeah, both movies this time. Neither ones were like, you know, home runs by any stretch. If I was to recommend, like, I think that they're for very different audiences. I think Armour of God will probably hold up a little bit better on repeat viewings because it's more of a simple, straightforward action movie, and the stunts and the comedy is going to work just as well every time, I think. Wicker Park, a lot of it's withholding what's going to happen and revealing things as it goes on, which may be very satisfying on a rewatch. But at the very least, it's the one where I can see the potential for it not working on a rewatch as well, or being less effective at the very least, because you don't have the mystery element kind of pulling you along. That said, though, I am curious about how some of those early scenes feel when you know exactly what the context is, having seen it already. So, you know, neither one was like a huge winner. I gave them both kind of in the sort of 6-ish. I think I gave Armour of God a 6.5, and I gave Wicker Park a 6. So take that for what you will. But yeah, that is me. And I should also mention that if you like seeing what I'm rating movies, I do have a Letterboxd account. I know a bunch of the audience already follow my account on there. Go have a look, and you can see whatever else I'm watching, and maybe even you can get a glimpse of what I might be talking about in a future Fuzz Thoughts, or even one of the main review shows. I already know one of the movies that I'll talk about next time, because I've already watched it, and I do have some things to say. But I will leave that for next time. So thank you for joining me. I do appreciate it. You can, of course, support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership. Thanks to everyone who already does. It really does make all the content possible. And these Fuzz Thoughts are like a little extra thing that I can do to like talk about some movies that aren't for review that I just, I can, whatever ones I'm interested in saying something about, I can jump on. And, maybe you'll get a recommendation out of it. Maybe you'll know the movie and want to interact a little bit and comment. That's always nice to see. So thank you very much for joining me. I do appreciate it. Keep watching movies. And if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic community.